London had always lived only in stories for Serafina della Torre, spoken of in drawing rooms and whispered about over tea in the Tuscan countryside. In those tales, it was a place of regimented civility, clipped manners, and skies the color of pewter, a city of rules. A city where young women behaved as though watched by God, their governess, and the Queen herself. She had never imagined how alive it would be. The moment Lord Ashbury's carriage pulled onto Grosvenor Square, a rush of sound swallowed her whole. Horses snorting clouds of warm breath into cold air, carriages rattling over cobblestones, footmen calling to one another beneath the glow of gas lamps. Eyes followed her as she stepped down, though she pretended not to notice. Her gloves were steady, her chin lifted with quiet dignity, though deep inside her chest something fluttered. Uncertainty, anticipation, perhaps the faint echo of dread. Lord Ashbury, tall and gentle-eyed, offered his arm. "Welcome to London, my dear. I suspect the city has been waiting for you." Serafina gave a soft, trained smile. "London does not know I exist, my lord." Lady Helena Ashbury, warm and elegant in a deep blue gown, laughed lightly. "Do not be so certain, Serafina. The moment we wrote that you'd be joining us for the season, the questions began. They expect you to be—" Her voice dropped to a playful whisper. "Terribly foreign." Foreign. The word prickled against Serafina's ribs. True, she was Tuscan-born, raised among olive groves, sunlit terraces, and books in multiple languages. True, she rode horses with a confidence many English ladies would faint over, but she was hardly some exotic creature sent to shock London. Yet even before she reached the ballroom that evening, she sensed the city had already invented its own version of her. The Ashburys' ballroom glowed like a captured sunrise, warm, golden, and grand enough to steal breath. Crystal chandeliers hung like inverted constellations, lighting a sea of gowns, jewels, and tailored coats. Serafina had taken no more than 3 steps into the room before she felt it. The shift. Conversations slowed. Fans hesitated mid-flutter, and dozens of eyes swept toward her with unified curiosity. A whisper drifted from nearby, "Is that her? The cousin from Tuscany? She rides horses alone, quite improper for a young lady. No wonder they sent her here to find a husband." Lady Helena leaned in close. "Pay them no mind. English society runs on whispers. It will waste them on anyone. But tonight—" Her expression flickered with something between amusement and caution. "Tonight is rather special." Serafina tilted her head. "Special?" Lord Ashbury's brows rose. "The War Duke is expected." "Ah, of course. Even in Italy, his name had travelled like wildfire. Rowan Sinclair, Duke of Hawkridge, a man hardened by the Crimea, shadowed by loss, and revered by every household in London. A hero wrapped in enigma. Lady Helena continued, "The Bellfleur sisters have practically built a shrine in anticipation of his return. Evelyn and Clarissa, they mean to secure him between them." Secure him. Such a cold way to speak of marriage. Before Serafina could respond, the music shifted sharply, and a ripple of breath swept the crowd. The double doors opened, and the Duke entered. He was taller than rumor suggested, shoulders straight as a drawn blade, his black coat cut with ruthless precision. The chandelier caught the faint scar above his brow, proof of the life he'd led before returning to London's glittering cages. Evelyn Bellfleur glided toward him instantly, golden curls gleaming beneath lamplight. Clarissa followed, eyes calculating, posture perfect. Both curtsied with identical grace. The Duke bowed slightly in acknowledgement, but his gaze slid past them with disinterest. Serafina stepped unobtrusively behind a marble pillar. She had no wish to be seen, not by a duke, not by London, not by anyone. But some things are seen whether invited or not. The air tightened. A silence thicker than the first swept the room. Serafina lifted her eyes, slowly, cautiously, only to meet a gaze that stole the breath from her lungs. The Duke was staring at her, not glancing, not observing, staring, as though she had interrupted the rhythm of his world. His expression did not shift, but his eyes, cool, controlled, storm-colored, held something unguarded, something startled, something drawn. Serafina looked away quickly, pulse skittering. Lady Helena's fan stilled. Oh my, that is not a look he gives freely. Across the room, the Bellfleur sisters turned, their painted smiles faltering as they followed the Duke's line of sight. Their eyes darkened, and in that instant, without a single word spoken, Serafina della Torre became their enemy. Chapter 2. The first whisper of scandal. Serafina had only just begun to explore a corner of the ballroom when the first cracks of disapproval began to spiderweb through the crowd. She is unaccompanied too often. She rides dangerously. Did you see how she arrived? So bold. Her parents allowed this. No wonder she was sent to England. Serafina pretended not to hear. Pretended her heart did not ache with each careless remark. But then she overheard something that struck deeper. Perhaps she is not as innocent as she appears, a lady murmured behind her fan. Women who ride like that. Well, one must wonder. Heat crawled beneath Serafina's skin, a whisper questioning her virtue, one of the few things she held sacred. Before the sting could settle fully, the crowd shifted around her. Movement, a presence, quiet but commanding, stilled the air. She turned. The Duke stood only a few steps away. His gaze swept the crowd, jaw tight. Not at her, she realized, but at the people whispering about her. He held himself like a man accustomed to war, not ballrooms. Miss della Torre, he said, his voice low, steady, and unexpectedly gentle. A shiver prickled down her spine. He knew her name. She dipped into a graceful curtsy. Your Grace. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. And in that heartbeat, Serafina felt something impossible, an invisible thread drawing taut between them, a thread the entire ballroom would soon feel. Because the moment Rowan Sinclair looked at her, truly looked, Evelyn Bellfleur's gloved hand curled into a fist. Clarissa's smile dropped like a mask. And London, ravenous for drama, recognized the spark of a scandal it would feast on for months. The Duke had noticed no one for years, until her. Serafina had not expected the ballroom to feel smaller the second time she stepped into it, but it did. Or perhaps it was simply the weight of all those watchful eyes, the whispers that curled around her name as though it were a curious foreign artifact everyone wished to examine. She held her composure, chin poised, breath steady, yet something inside her had begun to tremble. Not from fear, but from the slow, unsettling awareness that London had already decided who she was, and none of them had asked her. Lady Helena guided her through the room with gentle conversation, introducing her to a line of polite faces, each one smiling too tightly or too sweetly. Serafina responded with practiced grace, but she felt no real warmth until she heard a familiar voice rise above the din. "Serafina!" She turned and nearly laughed with relief. Marco di Carmignano strode toward her with the easy confidence of a man who had spent his entire life in open countryside rather than these suffocating ballrooms. Tall, dark-haired, warm-eyed. He was like a piece of Tuscany dropped into the middle of London, and her heart lifted instantly. His fiancée, sweet-faced Amelia, hurried beside him, offering Serafina a soft hug. "You arrived safely," Marco said in rapid Italian, his smile bright. "Emilia and I were praying London had not eaten you alive yet." London, hearing the foreign tongue, stilled. Serafina answered in their shared language before she could stop herself, a laugh slipping out. Light, unguarded, entirely too loud for the room. Marco kissed her hand in greeting, the most normal thing in Italy, and the most scandalous thing in London. She didn't notice. But Rowan Sinclair did. He stood near the orchestra platform, posture taut, expression composed. But his eyes had darkened in a way that made something inside her twist. He watched Marco's hand linger respectfully on her arm, watched her laugh, soft and relieved, watched a warmth in her he had not yet earned. And for the first time in years, perhaps since before the war, Rowan felt something he was not accustomed to feeling, a thin, sharp sting of jealousy. He did not understand it, and he did not welcome it, but it rooted itself beneath his ribs before he could turn away. Lady Helena leaned toward Serafina. "My dear, I didn't know you had friends in England." "They are newly arrived," Serafina replied, still smiling. "Marco and Emilia were childhood companions. They have been like family all my life." Lady Helena returned her smile, unaware of the eyes watching them, hungry, calculating, eager. Evelyn Bellfleur stood only a few steps away, the edges of her perfect smile hardening. Clarissa's gaze flicked between Serafina, Marco, and the Duke with the precision of a strategist assessing a battlefield. "So she has a man with her," Clarissa murmured beneath her breath. "Convenient," Evelyn whispered back, "and useful." Serafina, oblivious, continued speaking to Marco and Emilia, unaware of how intimately their Italian slipped into the room, how warmly Marco looked at her, how loudly her laughter contrasted with London's brittle etiquette. And then, something shifted. She felt the Duke's gaze again, heavy, steady, unavoidable. Serafina lifted her eyes, and their gazes locked across the room. A spark, a pull, a strange, breathless recognition. But just as quickly. She looked away, because in that one moment she felt something she had not prepared herself for. She liked him, and the realization frightened her more than she cared to admit. He was a duke, a war hero, a man London worshipped, and she had arrived only days ago and already stood at the center of rumor and attention she had never wanted. Serafina stepped back from Marco, her laughter fading, her posture tightening. She excused herself with an apologetic smile and moved toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. Marco frowned softly. "Is she well?" Emilia touched his arm. "She is overwhelmed. This world is not kind to women like her." Across the room, Rowan watched Serafina withdraw. Watched the brightness dim from her face the moment their eyes met. The sting inside him deepened. He did not understand her. He did not understand why she had turned away, why she had stepped back from him only to smile so freely at another man. But he felt the loss. He felt it sharply. He started to cross the room toward her, his steps steady, determined. Yet before he could reach her, Lady Helena stopped him with a gentle call for his attention. Rowan paused, duty locking him in place for a breath too long. When he looked back, Serafina was gone. She had disappeared into the crowd, leaving only the faint echo of her laughter, and an ache he had not expected. And behind him, Evelyn and Clarissa exchanged a look, slow, triumphant, and full of something dangerous. They had just seen the first crack in the Duke's composure, and they intended to widen it. Morning light slanted across the Ashburys' breakfast room, warming the patterned wallpaper and softening the silverware into gentle reflections. It should have felt welcoming, but Serafina sat with her teacup poised and untouched, her mind drifting back to the night before. London had felt too sharp, every whisper, every fan flutter, every narrowed eye. And Rowan Sinclair's gaze, steady, searching, impossible to ignore, lingered in her thoughts like a touch she had not received. Lady Helena poured more tea, her tone light. "My dear, I hope last night did not overwhelm you too terribly." Serafina managed a polite smile. "I survived." Lord Ashbury chuckled. "Barely, I imagine. London society is a jungle, and none more treacherous than a ballroom in early season." Serafina laughed softly, but the sound lacked its usual ease. Every time she remembered the way Rowan had looked at her, as though he saw past her composure and into something raw, she felt heat rise beneath her skin. She did not want to feel that way about him. It made her vulnerable. It made her seen. And Serafina had lived her entire life knowing how dangerous it was to be seen by the wrong people. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A footman entered. "My lady, Lord Marco di Carmignano and Miss Emilia Visconti have called. They hoped for a brief visit." Serafina's face brightened before she could stop it. "They're here?" Lady Helena smiled. "Show them in at once." Marco and Emilia stepped inside, warm as morning sunshine. Emilia hugged Serafina gently. Marco offered that familiar, affectionate smile she hadn't realized she needed. "We wish to ensure you were well," Emilia said. "London was intense." Serafina exhaled softly. "You have no idea." Marco grinned. "Oh, but we heard everything." Lady Helena raised a brow. "Heard what?" Marco waved a dismissive hand. "The whispers, the curious looks, the speculation. Tuscany is small. Gossip, there is entertainment. Here it is warfare." He said it lightly, but Serafina stiffened. "War?" "Yes." That was what London felt like. Lady Helena, unaware of the meaning beneath it, invited them to sit. Conversation flowed easily, warm and familiar. Emilia's gentle humor, Marco's playful teasing. They were the only pieces of home Serafina had left. Yet even in the warmth of their company, she felt the distant pull of another thought. Or rather, another person. Rowan Sinclair. The Duke had barely left her thoughts since last night, despite her efforts. He was too controlled, too observant, too aware of her in a way she did not know how to handle. And when she remembered the flicker she had seen in his eyes while she spoke with Marco, a tightening, a darkness, like jealousy, though she would not dare name it. She felt her pulse skip and stood abruptly. Perhaps a walk in the gardens will clear my mind. Emilia rose with her. "I'll come." Marco followed, all three stepping out into the crisp London morning. The air carried the faint scent of damp roses and trimmed hedges, the Ashbury estate still waking under the pale sun. Serafina breathed deeply, letting the quiet soothe her. "If you wish," Marco said gently, "we can ride this afternoon. Emilia has no lessons today." Serafina hesitated, because deep inside, a part of her wanted to ride, to feel the freedom she always found in open air. But another part whispered caution. Too many eyes, too many whispers, too many lies waiting to be invented. She tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "Perhaps another day." Marco studied her. "You're quieter today." "It's London." "It's not just London," Emilia murmured softly. "It's someone." Serafina's head snapped toward her. "Emilia, you avoided him," Emilia said simply, not unkindly, and he noticed. Serafina's chest tightened. "He is a duke. I'm hardly suitable for conversation, much less his attention." Marco exchanged a glance with Emilia, one of concern, not amusement. "Serafina, you think too little of yourself." Before she could answer, footsteps sounded on the gravel path behind them. Marco turned first. Emilia's hand slipped into his reflexively. Serafina froze. Rowan Sinclair approached with the silent power of a man accustomed to being obeyed. His dark coat contrasted sharply with the pale morning light, and his gaze found hers instantly. There it was again, that searching, unguarded intensity that made her blood pulse in her ears. "My lord," Serafina said softly, curtsying. Rowan bowed his head. "Miss della Torre." His voice was low, steady, but shaded with something he tried and failed to hide. He acknowledged Marco with a polite nod, but his eyes lingered on the faint way Serafina stepped back from him. The distance, the withdrawal. He felt it like a bruise. "You're enjoying the gardens?" he asked. Serafina clasped her hands, willing her heartbeat to steady. "They are very lovely, Your Grace." "And restful," Emilia added sweetly, perhaps too sweetly, because Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly, tracking the tension he sensed but could not name. Marco, oblivious, said, "We were just speaking of riding later this week. Serafina has not been out in days." Rowan's jaw tensed, barely visible, but there. He imagined her riding beside Marco, laughing freely, cheeks flushed with wind, and something irrational twisted beneath his ribs. Serafina saw it, and stepped back again, not because she feared him, but because the feelings rising inside her were too strong, too dangerous. Rowan felt the distance like a cut. He forced himself to remain composed. "If you will excuse me, I did not wish to intrude." And before Serafina could summon breath enough to speak, he turned. His footsteps faded along the gravel path, leaving the air thick with everything unsaid. Marco exhaled softly. He looked troubled. Emilia nodded. He looked like a man who wanted to speak and could not. Serafina stared at the path where the Duke had walked. Her pulse fluttered. Her throat tightened. "I should keep my distance," she whispered. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew she no longer wanted to. Hyde Park in late spring was a painting come alive. Glittering sunlight on serpentine waters, wind stirring the pale green leaves, and the steady rhythm of hooves striking the lane. It was the one place in London where society pretended to be relaxed, though every promenade was an unspoken competition. Lord and Lady Ashbury had insisted Serafina join them for the morning ride. Marco and Emilia followed close behind, their presence comforting as the grand paths opened before them. But comfort did not last long in London. Serafina rode with the ease of someone born to it, posture straight, hands steady, the morning wind catching strands of her dark hair. She rode astride, properly, securely, confidently, and while Tuscany would have admired such skill, London stared with horrified fascination. "She rides like a man," a woman whispered behind a gloved hand. "How indecent," another breathed. Serafina kept her eyes on the path and her chin high, refusing to let the comments sink beneath her skin, but she felt the weight of them all the same. Marco noticed. "Ignore them," he said softly. "Riding astride is safe. You know this." "Yes," she murmured, "but London does not." Emilia, ever gentle, leaned close in her saddle. "Then London may learn something today." Serafina offered her a small smile, but her pulse quickened as the crowd along the lanes shifted, subtly at first, then noticeably. Heads turned, murmurs rose, and fans fluttered like restless wings. She felt the change before she understood the reason. The Duke of Hawkridge had arrived. Rowan Sinclair rode a striking black stallion, posture military perfect, presence commanding enough to silence half the park. Men straightened as he passed, women blushed, even children stopped mid-play. But Rowan did not seem to notice any of them. His eyes found Serafina instantly. She did not look back at first. She forced herself to keep her gaze ahead, steady and composed, though she felt her heartbeat change rhythm, felt the pressure of him approaching like a shift in the weather. Still, she maintained her distance. Marco rode beside her, oblivious to the eyes burning into their backs. "Serafina," he said lightly, "you ride as if you were born with reins in your hands." She laughed under her breath. Perhaps I was. The soft sound carried across the lane. Rowan's jaw tightened. He guided his stallion closer, slow and deliberate, until he rode parallel with the group, close enough for his presence to alter the air itself. Lady Helena smiled warmly. "Your Grace, how lovely to see you." Rowan dipped his head politely. "Lady Helena, Lord Ashbury." Then his gaze returned to Serafina, as if he could not help it. "Miss della Torre," he said quietly. She looked at him then, finally, and the morning seemed to sharpen around them. "Your Grace," she replied, her voice calm despite the flutter rising beneath her ribs. Rowan's eyes traveled briefly to her saddle, her posture, the ease with which she rode astride. He admired her skill, he admired her freedom, but behind the admiration lay something deeper, something he did not have words for yet, or courage. "You ride well," he said, too controlled, too neutral. Serafina lifted her chin. "It is common in Tuscany." A whisper rippled behind them. "Of course it is common in Tuscany. Foreign habits. Bold girl." Rowan heard it. His expression darkened. Marco turned slightly. "Miss della Torre is an excellent rider. No male rider in Tuscany would dare challenge her." He meant it as a compliment. But Rowan's fingers tightened on his reins. He imagined her riding beside Marco through olive groves and sunlit hills, hair loose, laughing freely. And jealousy twisted through him like a blade he pretended not to feel. Lady Helena sensed the shift in the air. "Perhaps we should return to the carriages." A sudden cry rose from a young boy along the path. His pony reared, frightened by a passing carriage, and the boy nearly fell sideways. Rowan moved instantly. He urged his stallion forward with swift precision, intercepting the frightened pony and steadying it with practiced ease. His voice dropped low, steady, reassuring as he calmed the animal and kept the child upright. The park held its breath. Serafina watched, heart aching with something she refused to name. Rowan's gentleness, the quiet authority, the way he soothed fear without thinking. It revealed a side of him society rarely saw, and one she found herself unable to ignore. When the child was safe and reunited with his frantic governess, Rowan turned, just in time to see the softness in Serafina's expression before she hid it. Something inside him faltered. He rode back toward them, but Serafina looked away quickly, focusing on the reins, her posture stiffening again. Rowan felt it like a door closing. He slowed his stallion beside her, speaking quietly. "You avoided me last night." Her breath caught. "I did not wish to intrude upon your evening, Your Grace." "You did not intrude?" His voice was low, steady, far too sincere. Serafina kept her gaze fixed on the path. "London watches us too closely. I must be cautious." Rowan held her gaze then, searching her expression for the truth beneath the words. "You fear whispers?" he said. "I fear being the reason people speak of you," she whispered. There it was. The first crack in her distance. The first truth he wasn't meant to hear. Rowan's breath tightened. But before he could answer, before the fragile moment could deepen, Evelyn Bellfleur's voice rose behind them, falsely sweet. "Your Grace, we hope to find you." Clarissa followed, smile sharp as a blade. The moment shattered. Serafina straightened in her saddle, pulling away again. Rowan saw it, felt it, could not stop it. London watched them too closely, and the sisters had just discovered the most dangerous thing of all. The Duke cared. A soft drizzle drifted across London that afternoon, beading on the windows of the Ashboroughs' drawing room and turning the city into a muted watercolor. The Ashburys were hosting a small gathering, no dancing, no grand fanfare, just polite conversation over tea and piano music. Serafina preferred it to the chaos of the ballrooms, though she still felt the weight of London's curious stares whenever she entered a room. But today there were fewer strangers, just a handful of acquaintances, and Marco and Emilia, who brought warmth wherever they went. Emilia squeezed Serafina's hand as they sat beside the fireplace. "Are you feeling better today?" Serafina nodded. "Better, but still." "Watched." Marco huffed. "London should be grateful you even stepped foot in their city." That earned a small laugh from her, but she kept glancing toward the door. Not for Marco, not for Emilia. For him. She didn't want to, she wasn't trying to, but her eyes drifted there all the same, and when the Duke finally entered, dark coat slightly damp from the rain, expression collected yet intense, Serafina felt something inside her stir. He greeted the Ashburys with impeccable politeness, but the moment his eyes found Serafina, the room shifted. People didn't halt their conversations, but their attention sharpened, just a little. Rowan approached slowly, as though giving her the chance to breathe, or escape. "Miss della Torre," he said, bowing slightly. "Your Grace," she murmured, rising. Her fingers trembled faintly. She clasped them behind her back before he could see. "May I?" Rowan gestured toward a quieter corner of the room, near the tall French windows where the rain tapped softly against the glass. Serafina hesitated. She wanted to step away. She wanted to protect herself, but her heart, traitorous, warm, said otherwise. She nodded. Rowan walked beside her, his steps steady, his presence a quiet storm. When they reached the windows, the noise of the drawing room faded behind them, softened by distance and the patter of rain. He spoke first. "You withdrew from me at the park." Serafina's breath caught. "I did not mean to." "You did." His voice wasn't sharp. It was wounded. She looked away, staring at the raindrops racing down the glass. "London watches too closely, and I'm not suited for their eyes." Rowan frowned. "You care too much for their opinions, and you care too little for your own reputation," she whispered. He blinked, struck. Her words were soft, but true. "Miss della Torre," he said quietly, "if I worry for anything, it is not what London thinks of me." She turned toward him then, slowly, carefully. "What is it you worry for, Your Grace?" she asked. The silence between them deepened. The rain softened outside, tapping gently like a heartbeat. Rowan was not a man who bared emotion easily. Years of war had forged steel around his heart. But something in Serafina, something unguarded, earnest, unlocked a vulnerability he hadn't expected to feel again. "I worry," he said, "that I may unsettle you, that I may be too forward." Serafina's breath faltered. "No," she whispered. "It is not you who unsettles me. It is myself." His gaze sharpened instantly. "Yourself." She looked down, embarrassed. "I find it difficult to think clearly around you, and dangerous, Your Grace, to feel anything in a city that has already judged me before it knows me." Rowan took a single step closer. Not enough to touch, but enough for her to feel his presence like warmth across her skin. "London may judge," he said softly, "but I do not." Serafina swallowed. A tremor passed beneath her ribs. He meant it. She could hear the truth in his voice. But that only made it worse. because wanting him was a luxury she could not afford. At that moment, Marco and Emilia appeared on the far side of the room, laughing quietly with Lady Helena. Marco waved when he noticed Serafina, his smile warm and familiar. Rowan's eyes flickered in that direction, just briefly, and the sting returned. Jealousy. Sharp, unwelcome, unavoidable. "You have good friends," Rowan said, his voice carefully controlled. "Yes," Serafina replied. "They are like family." He nodded, but something cold slipped beneath his ribs. Family, or something more. He had no right to ask, no right to care. But he did. Before he could question his own reaction, Evelyn Bellfleur glided toward them like a shadow draped in silk. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were poison. "Your Grace," she said sweetly, "might I borrow you for a brief conversation? It concerns the charity event next week." Rowan did not move. Serafina stepped back instinctively because she could not bear the idea of being caught between them. He saw her retreat. He felt it, and it dug into him far deeper than Evelyn's voice ever could. He bowed his head slightly. "Of course, Miss Bellfleur." Evelyn cast Serafina a victorious glance before Rowan followed her across the room. Serafina watched them go, her chest tightening. Emilia returned to her side. "Are you all right?" Serafina forced a small smile. "Perfectly." But her heart told a different story. Across the room, Rowan glanced back, only once, only briefly. But Serafina saw it, and so did Evelyn. London, it seemed, had just discovered its favorite new story, the Duke and the foreign girl he could not stop looking at. The rain had cleared by the evening of Lord Pembroke's musical, leaving the sky washed pale and silver. Lanterns glowed along the estate's entrance, casting warm light on polished carriages and gowns that shimmered as guests arrived. Serafina stepped inside the grand marble foyer with the Ashberries, her posture poised but her heartbeat unsteady. She felt eyes turned toward her, curious, calculating, hungry for something to whisper about. She had grown used to it, but tonight, her nerves thrummed for reasons she could not name. Marco and Emilia appeared moments later, offering the comfort of familiar voices and gentle smiles. Emilia adjusted Serafina's shawl with sisterly tenderness. "You look beautiful," she whispered. Serafina softened. "You're too kind." Marco grinned. "Tonight will be uneventful. I promise. No riding, no chaos, no—" He never finished the sentence, because Evelyn and Clarissa Bellfleur approached with matching smiles, and a stranger trailing behind them, a man with dark curls, olive skin, and the unmistakable accent of Tuscany when he spoke. "Miss della Torre," Evelyn said sweetly. "May we introduce our cousin, Luca Bellfleur? He has just arrived from Florence." "Florence." Serafina's chest lifted with surprise. "You are Tuscan." Luca bowed low, his smile warm. "And honored to meet someone from home." Serafina returned the smile politely. "I hope London is treating you kindly." He laughed lightly. "I find it entertaining." Evelyn and Clarissa exchanged a private look behind their fans. Something in Luca's eyes lingered too long, too curiously. Serafina stepped back slightly, sensing something she couldn't name. But before she could excuse herself, music swelled from the next room and the Bellfleurs drifted away, taking Luca with them. Or so she thought, because only moments later, Serafina found herself separated from Marco and Emilia by a cluster of guests. She stood near a towering vase of lilies, trying to steady herself in the overwhelming press of people when she heard familiar Italian spoken in a hushed tone behind her. Her blood chilled. It was Luca, and he was not speaking softly enough. She was always wild, Luca murmured theatrically. In Tuscany, everyone knew Serafina rode with the stable boys. She and a young man were inseparable. A lady gasped. Truly? Oh, but it is not my place to speak, Luca said, feigning regret. Still one wonders if she came to England to escape the consequences. Serafina froze. Her lungs burned. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. For a moment she could not move at all. It was a lie, a cruel, deliberate lie, and he spoke it casually, as though spreading truth. She turned just as Rowan Sinclair stepped into view. He had heard everything. The Duke stood only a few paces away, expression unreadable, posture rigid as a man bracing for a blow. His gaze shifted from Luca to Serafina, then back again. Pain flickered in his eyes. Sharp, deep, unmistakable. Serafina's heart cracked. She wanted to speak, to deny, to defend herself, but before she could form a single word, Marco called her name from across the room. Serafina! Relief flooded her. Marco's voice had never sounded so welcome. She moved toward him quickly, desperate to anchor herself in something familiar. Emilia rushed to her side, their expressions soft with concern. Rowan watched it all, watched Marco take her hand gently, speaking rapid Italian, watched Serafina soften, her eyes warming with recognition, watched her lean closer so she could hear him over the music. To Rowan, the sight struck like the final confirmation of Luca's lie. The closeness, the familiarity, the way she melted into conversation only when it was with another man. His chest tightened, breath locked somewhere between anger and heartbreak. He stepped forward, ready to speak, ready to demand truth. But a delicate hand seized his arm. Rowan's sister, Lady Arabella, looked at him with urgent expectation. Rowan, come, Mother requests your presence. Immediately. His jaw clenched. Not now. Arabella's voice hardened. She insists. He glanced back, just in time to see Serafina look up at Marco and smile softly. The kind of smile that suggested history, depth, tenderness, a smile he had not earned. Rowan's breath left him in a quiet, wounded exhale. Arabella tugged his arm again. Rowan! And this time, he followed her, not because he wanted to, but because staying, watching, hurting, felt unbearable. Across the room, Serafina lifted her trembling hand to her throat. Marco, she whispered, voice breaking, what did he say about me? Emilia answered softly, anger flashing in her eyes. A lie meant to ruin you. Serafina's gaze drifted toward the place where Rowan had stood moments earlier. He was gone, and the hollowness in her chest made it impossible to breathe. That night, London whispered a story that spread faster than truth ever could, and neither Serafina della Torre nor the Duke of Hawkridge slept at all. The days that followed were heavy, grey and cruel in a way Serafina had not expected. London had always watched her with curiosity, but now it watched with judgment. The rumor Luca planted grew like mold in dark corners, ugly, silent, impossible to stop. Servants whispered when she passed. Ladies lifted their skirts, stepping around her as if scandal were contagious. Men who once bowed politely now barely acknowledged her. Marco and Emilia stayed close, refusing to let her face society alone. But even their warmth could not shield her from words spoken just loud enough to wound. A girl like that. Wild, they say. Her parents sent her away, didn't they? She pretends to be innocent, but we know better. The worst part was not the whispers. The worst part was Rowan. He had become a ghost in every room she entered, present but cold, distant, unreadable. He no longer sought her out with those searching eyes. He no longer softened at the sight of her. If anything, he hardened. He never approached her, never offered a greeting, never even stood near her. Serafina told herself it did not matter. She told herself she was relieved. But each time she caught a glimpse of him, speaking to Evelyn with polite civility, turning away when Marco guided her through a crowd, something inside her twisted until she could barely breathe. She had never wanted him to believe the lie. She had never wanted him to think she was capable of deception, but she had no chance to explain. He gave her none, and her silence became its own punishment. A week later, Lady Ashbury insisted on taking Serafina to a garden luncheon hosted by one of London's more influential matrons, Lady Harrington. Serafina dressed carefully, hoping to blend into the muted elegance of the gathering. It did not matter. From the moment she arrived, conversation stiffened. Fans fluttered nervously. Women leaned closer to one another, whispering over porcelain cups of tea. Lady Harrington greeted her with a strained smile. "Miss della Torre, how lovely that you could join us." The pause before "lovely" spoke volumes. Serafina kept her chin lifted, her dignity intact, though her insides trembled. She found a quiet seat near the edge of the garden, beside Marco and Emilia, who flanked her like loyal sentinels. For a moment, she felt safe, until Lady Beatrice Talbot approached. Beatrice, sharp-tongued, impeccably dressed, and notoriously proud of her purity and social standing, stopped before Serafina with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Miss della Torre," she said sweetly, "London has been very interested in you lately." The garden grew still. Serafina met Beatrice's gaze. "Interested?" she repeated softly. "Oh yes," Beatrice said, folding her fan with an audible snap. "Though I suppose attention is nothing new to you. Tuscany must be quite permissive. So many rumors. One hardly knows what to believe." Marco stood immediately, fury flashing across his face. "Your tone is out of line." But Beatrice did not look at him. She looked directly at Serafina, savoring each word. "Tell me, Miss della Torre, is it true you came to England because you were no longer welcome in your own home?" Serafina froze. It felt like the air had been punched from her chest. Marco stepped forward. "That is a lie. Serafina left Tuscany with honor." Beatrice lifted a brow. "And yet, some say otherwise. Some say she was seen too often in the company of men. Some say she—" "Enough." The new voice cut across the garden like a blade. Rowan had arrived. Even from several feet away, his presence commanded silence. Every head turned toward him. Every breath seemed to pause. Beatrice straightened. "Your Grace, I—" Rowan lifted a hand. "I said enough." For one aching heartbeat, Serafina thought he had come to defend her. But then he turned his gaze on her, steady, cold, withholding, and the hope inside her shattered. "Miss Talbot's poor choice of words aside," Rowan said, voice controlled, "it is not my place to intervene in matters that do not concern me." Serafina's breath caught. It was a polite rejection, a public distancing, a declaration that she meant nothing to him. The garden blurred for a moment, her vision clouding with humiliation she fought desperately to conceal. Marco moved to her side instantly. "Serafina, let us leave." She nodded, barely understanding her own voice. Yes, please." Emilia wrapped an arm around her waist as they guided her away, past rows of silent guests, past Beatrice's victorious smirk, past Rowan, who did not stop her, who did not speak, who did not even look at her. Serafina held herself together until they reached the carriage. Then the tears came, quiet, trembling, unstoppable. Emilia held her. Marco cursed the entire city. And inside the garden, Rowan remained perfectly still, hands clenched behind his back, jaw locked so tightly it ached. His sister approached him carefully. "Rowan, you could have defended her." His eyes remained fixed on the path Serafina had walked. "I could have," he said, voice hollow. "Then why didn't you?" He closed his eyes. "Because," he whispered, "I believed her incapable of deceiving me, until I heard the truth." Arabella's face softened. "What truth?" Rowan didn't answer. Because he didn't know anymore. Everything inside him was tangled. Pride, jealousy, hurt, longing, confusion. And behind all of it, a fear he could not name. That night, London celebrated the fall of the foreign girl with cruel delight. Only Serafina, Marco, Emilia, and Rowan, who could not sleep, carried the weight of what had been broken. And none of them knew that the truth was only days away from tearing the entire season apart. 3 days passed after the luncheon, and each one felt like a lifetime. Serafina barely left her room at the Ashburys' townhouse. She kept the curtains drawn, the lamps dimmed, and allowed only Emilia to sit near her. Marco paced outside her door like a restless guardian, muttering curses in Italian every time he remembered Beatrice Talbot's smirk. By the third morning, Serafina had made her decision. She folded her dresses carefully, hands trembling. She wrote a short note for Lady Helena and Lord Ashbury. She told Marco and Emilia she needed to leave London, quietly, before the season destroyed what remained of her name. Emilia cried. Marco swallowed fury. "Serafina, you cannot let them win." She tried to smile. It came out broken. They already have. Downstairs, Rowan Sinclair stood in the Ashburys' foyer, speaking in low tones with Lord Ashbury. He looked exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes, shoulders tight beneath his coat, but his voice was steady. "I came to speak with Miss della Torre." Lord Ashbury hesitated. "I fear she is indisposed." Rowan's jaw tightened. "I insist." Before the argument could build, Marco entered the foyer, expression colder than winter frost. He stopped in front of Rowan and did not bow. "Your Grace." Rowan felt the tension immediately. "Lord Marco." Marco's eyes burned. "Did you come to watch her suffer, or have you not done that enough already?" Rowan stiffened. "Mind yourself." "No," Marco snapped. "I will not. Not when she cries because of you." The words hit Rowan like a blow. He exhaled slowly, struggling to hold on to composure. "What is it you think I've done?" Marco laughed, quiet, sharp, furious. "You believed the lie." Rowan's chest locked. Marco stepped closer. "Luca Bellfleur, the man you overheard, he lied because Evelyn and Clarissa paid him too." The world tilted. Rowan felt heat rise beneath his skin. "He admitted it to Emilia," Marco continued. "He is her cousin by marriage, and he thinks she is too gentle to repeat what he told her." Rowan swallowed hard. "Repeat it." Marco's voice dropped to a warning whisper. "Your Grace, Serafina has never been with a man, ever. She barely knows how to speak to men. She grew up riding horses and reading books, not sneaking into stables with lovers." Rowan's breath shook. He turned away, just slightly, because shame pressed against his ribs like iron. Marco's voice sharpened. "And when she needed you most, you abandoned her." Rowan flinched. He didn't mean to, but he did. Marco stepped back, voice trembling with restrained fury. "She is leaving London tonight." Rowan's head snapped up. "No." "Yes," Marco said, "because you chose to believe strangers instead of the woman who has done nothing but try to survive your city." Rowan's heart pounded against his sternum. Every moment of the past weeks hit him in a crashing wave. Her laughter, her courage, her distance, her tears, and the crushing truth that he had been wrong. "Where is she?" Rowan demanded. Marco lifted his chin. "Suffering upstairs. You will not see her." Rowan didn't wait. He brushed past Marco, past Lord Ashbury, past the startled footman, and climbed the staircase 2 steps at a time. He reached her door, raised his hand, and froze. Soft sobs drifted from inside. The sound pierced him. He stepped back, breath tight, because entering now, standing before her while she cried because of him, felt unbearable. He did not deserve to see her like this. Not yet. He needed truth. He needed justice. He needed blood, and Luca Bellfleur would give him all 3. Rowan found Luca in the courtyard of Lady Pembroke's residence, where the man was preparing for another night of revelry, unaware that the Duke of Hawkridge approached like a storm. Luca turned, surprised. "Your Grace." Rowan seized him by the collar and slammed him against the stone archway. The courtyard went silent. "You will speak," Rowan said, voice low and lethal, "or you will not walk out of this garden." Luca paled. I don't." Rowan's grip tightened. "You lied about Miss della Torre." No, Rowan's fist struck the stone beside Luca's head. Luca yelped. "You lied," Rowan repeated, "and you will tell me who paid you." Luca trembled. Evelyn and Clarissa?" Rowan closed his eyes for one single, burning moment. Then he released Luca, letting the man crumple to the cobblestones. "Leave London," Rowan said. "Tonight, or I will ruin you myself." Luca fled. Rowan turned toward the entrance just as Evelyn and Clarissa stepped into the courtyard. Startled by Luca's flight, unaware they were about to face the man they thought they had outsmarted. Rowan approached them with slow, deliberate steps. Evelyn smiled nervously. "Your Grace, what?" Rowan cut her off. "What you did to Miss della Torre was cruel," he said, "and cowardly." Clarissa stiffened. "I beg your pardon." "You won't receive any." Rowan's voice was controlled fire. "You planted a lie you knew would destroy her reputation. You sought to humiliate her because she stood in a place you believed belonged to you." Evelyn's face drained of color. Rowan stepped closer. "If you ever speak her name again, if you breathe another word of slander, I will ensure neither of you is welcomed in any drawing room in London for the rest of your lives." Silence fell like a blade, and for the first time, the Bellfleur sisters understood the truth. The Duke of Hawkridge was not a man to cross, not when he protected someone. By nightfall, Rowan was no longer a man whispering in empty rooms. He was a man running through London streets, coat whipping behind him, breath sharp in the cold air. Because Serafina della Torre was about to leave the city, leave the season, leave him, and if she left tonight, he would never forgive himself. He reached the Ashbury townhouse just as a footman emerged with her trunk. Panic sliced into him. "Where is she?" Rowan demanded. The footman swallowed. "Your Grace, she's in the carriage. They are preparing to depart." Rowan's pulse roared. He sprinted, across the cobblestones, past the front steps, toward the waiting carriage, where Serafina sat inside, tear-stained and trembling, unaware that the man who had broken her heart was coming to stop her. The Ashbury carriage rumbled in the quiet London street, its lanterns glowing faintly in the mist. Inside, Serafina sat between her trunks, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her body trembling each time the wheels struck a cobblestone. Her heart felt heavy, too heavy for her small frame. "Sigh, perhaps you should stay," Emilia had whispered before she boarded. Serafina smiled sadly. I have no place here." Those words echoed now, louder than the horse's hooves. She pressed her hand to her chest as if she could hold herself together, trying not to look back through the window, trying not to think of a pair of storm-grey eyes that had once softened whenever they found her. But that softness was gone. She saw the way he looked at her now, with disappointment, with distance. So she told herself this was the right choice, the only choice. The carriage jolted forward and suddenly lurched to a stop. The horses whinnied, startled by something massive blocking the road. The coachman shouted, "Your Grace!" Serafina's heart stopped. Number? No, it couldn't be. The carriage door was yanked open, cold night air flooding in, and there he stood. Rowan Sinclair, Duke of Hawkridge, chest rising sharply, coat half unbuttoned from running, hair windswept, breath visible in the frigid air. A man who looked like he had crossed all of London and would cross the world to stop this one carriage. "Miss della Torre," he said, voice strained. "Get out." Serafina froze. "Your Grace, please." The word was raw, unfiltered. Not a command, a plea. Her breath trembled. Slowly she stepped down, boots touching the damp cobblestones. The moment she stood before him, Rowan exhaled as if he had been holding his breath for a week. "You are leaving," he said softly. "Yes," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Without speaking to me." "You made it clear, Your Grace," she said, voice shaking, "that my struggles do not concern you." Rowan flinched as if struck. Serafina. Her name broke from him like something he had been forbidden to say. "Do not," she whispered. "Please." She stepped back, but he stepped forward, gently, without touching her, just closing the distance until she could feel the warmth of him in the icy air. "You cannot leave." "You gave me no reason to stay," she replied. Rowan swallowed hard, breath unsteady. "I did not defend you," he said. "I should have. I knew it the moment you walked away from me at the garden." Serafina looked down. "Why didn't you?" "Because I believed something I should never have believed." His voice dropped, hoarse. "I believed the worst of you." Serafina's throat tightened. "It hurt," she whispered. "It hurt more than anything I have known." Rowan closed his eyes briefly, pained. When he opened them, the rawness was visible. "I was wrong," he said, "and I have come to tell you the truth." Serafina blinked, stunned. "The truth?" "Yes." Rowan took a breath that shook only at the edges. "I know who lied, and why, and I have dealt with them." Serafina stepped backward, overwhelmed. "Dealt with? How?" "Enough that they will never speak your name again." Her lips parted. This was the war duke, not the polite nobleman, the soldier, the protector, the man who moved through cities like a tide. "I'm not angry with them," she whispered. "I'm angry with you." He nodded, accepting the wound. "I know. You believed them before you believed me." "I did." His voice broke. "And I have not known peace since." Silence stretched, heavy with everything unsaid. Rowan looked at her, not as a duke, not as London's hero, not as a man afraid of his own heart, but as someone who had finally realized what truly mattered. "Serafina," he said quietly, "I cannot undo what I did. But I can stand here and ask you not to go." Tears prickled against her lashes. "You hurt me," she whispered. "I know. You humiliated me. I know. You let the world attack me." Each admission seemed to cut him open further, but he didn't look away. "Tell me one thing," she said softly. "Why do you want me to stay?" The world stilled. Rowan took one step closer. Their breaths mingled in the cold London night. Because, he said, voice barely audible, losing you feels like war, and I've survived enough battles to know I cannot survive this one. Her breath hitched. He lifted a hand, slowly, so slowly, then stopped just short of touching her cheek. I will not kiss you, he said, trembling, unless you tell me to. Serafina closed her eyes, heart pounding. For a moment she swayed toward him, but then the memory of the whispers, the humiliation, the ache of being abandoned in public. She stepped back. Rowan's breath shattered. Your Grace, she whispered, voice breaking, I cannot forgive you yet. He bowed his head, the hurt unmistakable. I will wait. I need time. Take it. I need space. You shall have it. I need to know you mean what you say. He lifted his gaze, steady and solemn. I will spend every day proving it. The wind moved between them, cold and sharp, carrying everything neither of them dared to say aloud. Serafina swallowed. I will stay in London a little longer, she said quietly. Rowan's exhale was almost a prayer. But nothing is resolved, she added. I understand. You and I are not anything. Not yet, he murmured. She looked away, cheeks flushing. Good night, Your Grace. Good night, Serafina. He stepped back, allowing her to return to the carriage. He watched it roll away, slowly, carefully, as if she were something sacred he could not touch, but he did not move until she was out of sight. Not because she was leaving, but because for the first time she had chosen to stay. The final ball of the season glittered like a crown jewel, crystal chandeliers blazing with light, gold leaf shimmering along the walls, musicians playing as though royalty itself were in attendance. Every noble family in London had come, hungry for spectacle. And they got one. Because when Serafina arrived, the ballroom fell into a hush so sharp it felt like a blade. She wore a soft pale blue gown, simple compared to the jeweled gowns around her, but it was the quiet beauty that stole breath. Emilia had styled her hair delicately. Marco had escorted her with protective calm. But Serafina felt hollow, afraid, uncertain. She had stayed in London, but she had not spoken to Rowan since the carriage. Her heart beat too loudly as she stepped inside. The whispers came instantly. She has the nerve to return. Foreign girl. Ruined. Emilia squeezed her arm. Ignore them. But Serafina's chest tightened, and then the crowd shifted. Heads turned. A ripple of awareness passed through the ballroom like a gust of wind. Rowan Sinclair, Duke of Hawkridge, entered. He wore stark black, the high stiff collar framing his jaw, his cravat immaculate, his posture powerful enough to command silence. He saw her immediately, and there was no distance this time, no hesitation, no fear. He crossed the ballroom toward her with a determination that startled everyone, shoulders straight, gaze locked on her like she was the only reason he had ever stepped foot into society. Ladies gasped, gentlemen whispered. The Bellfleur sisters paled. Serafina's breath caught. He stopped before her, bowed his head, not like a duke greeting a guest, but like a man who had chosen humility before love. And then he turned, facing the entire ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, Rowan said, voice carrying with military precision, I ask for your attention. The music died. Silence swallowed the room whole. Serafina's heart pounded painfully. Rowan spoke, calm but burning. I was raised in war, he began. I have seen the worst of humanity, and it shaped me. It made me disciplined, controlled, a man who respects rules. His gaze swept across the elegant crowd. And yet I stand here tonight ashamed, because no battlefield ever showed the cruelty I have seen within these walls. Gasps, a ripple of shock, but Rowan was not finished. "You pride yourselves on civility," he said, "on gentility, on refinement, and yet you tore apart a young woman with more dignity than any of you could hope to possess." Evelyn flinched. Clarissa looked away. Rowan continued, voice colder. "Some of you spread lies. Some of you strengthened them. Most of you enjoyed them." A pause. "You condemned her for being foreign. Yet half of you spend your summers abroad bragging about your continental tastes." Several ladies stiffened. "You condemned her for riding astride, despite admiring the very men who taught her such skill." A murmur of shame spread. "And worst of all," Rowan's voice deepened, steadied, "you questioned her virtue when she had done nothing to earn your suspicion." Serafina's eyes stung. Rowan turned slightly, speaking to them all but looking directly at her. "I have watched London applaud cruelty while calling it propriety. I have watched women who claim compassion behave with venom sharper than any soldier's blade. And I have realized," he stepped closer to Serafina, "that I want no part of a world that rejects the only woman whose character humbles me." Serafina's breath trembled. Rowan lifted her hand gently, reverently, as if it were something holy. "I admire her courage," he said. "Her goodness, her honesty. A beat. And I confess, I was a fool to doubt her. I listened to poison instead of to her heart. It is the gravest mistake I've ever made." Serafina's grip weakened. She nearly swayed. Rowan steadied her, his thumb barely brushing her fingers. "I cannot undo what was done," he said softly. "But I can show you the man I choose to be. Starting now." He looked out again, eyes sharp with authority. "If any of you believe you know what virtue looks like, look at her." Serafina's tears fell. "And if any of you dare speak her name again in cruelty," he said, voice ringing, "you will answer to me." Silence. A charged, breathless silence. Then Rowan turned fully toward her. Just her, everything else falling away. "Serafina della Torre," he said, voice low but carrying, "I love you. Not dramatic, not poetic, but real, grounded. A man stripped bare. I love your spirit," he continued. "I love your mind. I love your fire. And I love the way you have held yourself with dignity even as this city tried to break you." Serafina trembled. Rowan stepped closer. "I'm not asking for an answer now," he said softly. "I'm asking for the chance to earn your forgiveness and your heart." His voice broke slightly. "If you choose to refuse me, I will walk away and never trouble your peace again. But if you choose to give me even a sliver of hope," his breath hitched barely, "I will spend the rest of my life proving that love is not weakness, nor scandal, nor rumor." He lowered his forehead toward hers. Not touching, just close enough that their breaths mingled. "Love is respect," he whispered. "And you are the only woman I've ever respected enough to love." Serafina's vision blurred. She lifted her hand, shaking, and touched the side of his jaw. Rowan inhaled sharply. Her voice was the quietest he had ever heard it. "Rowan, you have already earned my heart." He closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Around them, the ballroom remained breathless, until applause erupted. Wild, joyful, shocked, ecstatic. Serafina fell into his arms, and this time he didn't stop himself. He held her tight, one hand at her waist, the other at the back of her head, as if he had spent a lifetime waiting for her. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent, not claiming, honoring. And London, for the first time in weeks, felt something pure, a love story too powerful to ruin. morning sunlight spilled gently over Hawkridge Estate, turning the rolling fields into rivers of gold. The countryside had finally begun to warm after a long winter, and the scent of fresh earth drifted along the quiet bridle paths. Serafina rode her mare with easy confidence, skirts gathered neatly, the breeze tugging soft strands of hair from beneath her riding hat. A year of marriage had settled her gracefully into English life, yet she carried Tuscany's warmth with her still. Behind her, Rowan rode his black stallion, posture perfect, expression softened by the kind of happiness a battlefield could never teach him. He loved riding beside her like this. No crowds, no whispers, no expectations. Just the sound of hooves, the quiet rustle of the trees, and the woman he called his wife. He urged his stallion closer until their knees brushed lightly. Serafina shot him a look, half playful, half embarrassed. "Rowan," she murmured, "you will spook the horses." Rowan smiled, the kind of slow, unguarded smile she had learned was only for her. "They are not spooked," he said, "merely aware that I intend to ride as close to my wife as I please." Serafina looked away quickly, fighting the warmth rising in her cheeks. Marriage had given her confidence, but it hadn't cured her of blushing whenever Rowan flirted with her. They rode in silence for a moment. Soft, peaceful, married silence. Then Rowan spoke, voice low and thoughtful. "You know," he said, "this path would be perfect for teaching a small child to ride." Serafina nearly dropped her reins. "Rowan!" He hid his smirk terribly. "What? I'm merely stating an observation." "You're teasing me," she muttered. "Only because I enjoy the way you blush." His tone deepened, and because I find myself hoping, more often than I admit. Serafina's heart stumbled. He reached over and brushed his gloved fingers along her wrist, gentle, reverent, warm. "I want a family with you," he said softly. "Someday. Not for duty, not for lineage." His eyes softened, "But because I cannot imagine anything more beautiful than a child who carries your kindness." Serafina felt breathless, weak, loved in a way she had never known. "Rowan," she whispered. He straightened in the saddle, giving her space, his voice gentle. "It need not be soon, and only if you wish it. But I wanted you to know, it is a dream I hold quietly, carefully." She looked at him then, really looked. This man, once feared by London, once guarded by walls thicker than stone, now watching her with the tenderness of a man who knew he had found his entire life in one woman. She reached across the small space and touched his hand. "Perhaps," she said softly. "One day." Rowan's eyes warmed instantly, brighter than the spring sun. "One day," he echoed, and brought her hand to his lips, brushing a kiss against her knuckles. The horses walked on, calm and steady, as the Duke and Duchess rode side by side down the long country road. Partners, confidants, lovers, and equals. And somewhere in the quiet rustle of the fields, Serafina imagined a future filled with little footsteps and laughter. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. With him, always with him.
I walk through winter's colder than any man should ever know. But nothing froze me deeper than the thought of letting go.
Your name was like a lantern held out in the drifting snow. I'd rather lose the path entirely than walk this world alone. I'd rather be trapped with you
in the worst storm heaven sends, then stand in perfect sunlight and face this life again. I'd rather starve beside you than feast without your hand in mine. You're the only home I carry across the turning tides. I've heard the whispers breaking like frost beneath my feet. They say I should forget you, but my heart refuses peace. If famine came tomorrow and the skies fell black with grief, I'd hold you through the hunger and still call it love, not need. If ruin comes to find me, let it find me at your door. I'd fold my pride like linen and leave it on your floor. For all the world could offer, I've never wanted more than to breathe the air beside you and be yours forevermore. I'd rather be trapped with you in the worst storm heaven sends than stand in perfect sunlight and face this life again. I'd rather starve beside you than feast without your hand in mine. You're the only home I carry across the turning tides. If I could choose the seasons, I'd choose the bitter cold, just to hear you whisper, my love, I won't let go. For joy without your presence feels hollow, thin and old. I'd trade 1,000 summers for one night inside your hold. Let kingdoms rise around me, let gold fill every room. None of it would matter if it meant I lost you soon. I'd rather face the thunder and the echoing of doom than live a life of plenty in a heart too wide with gloom. Take all my days, my borrowed breath, my memories and fear. If I can walk beside you for one more fleeting year, let famine shake the valley, let storms draw ever near. Love is worth the ruin if your voice is all I hear. I'd rather be trapped with you in the worst storm heaven sends than stand in perfect sunlight and face this life again. I'd rather starve beside you than feast without your hand in mine. You're the only home I carry across the turning tides. If the world should fall around us